My God, we ended up in TikTok land, if you can imagine. That's where we ended. That's amazing. That was amazing, David. The truth comes out in the last 2 seconds.
Okay, so I wanted to give you a little bit more time for you. So instead of doing the usual breakout room summary, I feel that probably it's better for allow everyone to share what's the one thing that is, you're taking away from today's conversation. I think that'll be nice, so we can hear from everyone. So who would like to, instead of me picking up, who is on my screen, who would like to go? Because it's such a small group, we can manage that. So who would like to go first with your individual reflection? So what's your one takeaway based on the chat you had in the breakout room? And then we just go around.
I reckon we'll throw Andrew in the deep end.
Yeah.
No, Michael volunteering. Okay,
of course, that could be me volunteering for it, but
yeah. Now you go, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah. You've spoken up first, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I think the probably the one thing is that everyone's got different boundaries. There's no one size fits all. What works for one person, one team, one organization will be different for every other person, team, and organization.
It's a fantastic point.
So I'll go now then, and I've got two. I'm going to just be very brief, and I'm going to come up with two. And one is, it's so important that we not only care about the experience that our people are having, but that we tell them so, that we make sure that they understand that if part of their experience is they go and do something somewhere else, they leave us, we should encourage them to do that. Maybe that's not news exactly, but it's part of our leading with a true sort of care for the individual, and rather than the short-term focus of our organisation. I don't know whether that resonated with me. And the other interesting observation somebody made is that negative behaviours, or the opposite of mindful leadership, is not focused to any particular thinking style. It's not just a right-brained or a left-brained thing, and this was addressing particularly the point in the
declaration,
text, the declaration there, and that actually there are toxic, difficult, negative leadership behaviours in people who are quite, have a high emotional intelligence and a high psychological awareness. They can, in fact, sometimes be the most manipulative and dangerous. It's not just the, IT propeller heads that can be that way. So we've got to think of this quite subtly, I think. So that was, I'm going to spend a bit of time thinking about that one.
Thanks, Andrew.
So
well,
for me,
go next.
I'm happy to go next.
Thanks, Rob.
For me, probably big takeaways, of course, the cultural piece. So we spent a lot of time talking about whether you work for a for-purpose organisation or consulting, etc., and the fact that quite often it's the culture that actually leads to an extension, and the standard one's the long hours, and the fact that can become quite the norm. So for me, it's how do we do such a significant change to the culture to actually ensure that everyone feels comfortable and doesn't feel peer pressure to work long hours. And something I didn't mention, but I had joined a discussion recently where the organisation empowered the team members to actually tell particular people that they've been working too long. And if that happened, they had to take 2 days off. So even all the way up to the CEO, and this was during COVID, so they had a team member told the CEO that they basically they'd been working too many hours, and the CEO's access was removed for 2 days. So imagine how strong a message that actually sends to the entire organisation, that the CEO can, in essence, be sidelined for 2 days. So just something for me to consider, and how I incorporate maybe nothing that not quite as strong as that, but how do I incorporate that sort of idea in my next team?
Can you do that to me right now?
Yeah. So
They don't get
we'll
any
just-
shears. They can go cut your access, basically.
You and I, Michael, Nick, we need a break. We need a break. So, one of
Thanks,
the
Rob.
things, one of the. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, just say thanks, Rob. Go, Simon.
One of the things that I mentioned that we were talking about was particularly in fintechs and startups, you have these things called shares, and you incentivize people through these vague terms, the promise of a better tomorrow for a little bit of extra money, and people will practically kill themselves to get it. And it's sometimes 5%, 10%. I mean, in my case, it's 30, right? So you end up with a situation where you can get 30% of your wage on top of whatever it is. That is, and it's amazing what people will do. It's amazing what people will sell to get that extra bit of money. And a lot of it is subjective. There's a lot of this stuff is how hard do you work, and people work long hours because they justify the fact that makes them justify this additional payment. And one of the things we do from a budget, from this perspective, is we have objective measures where people can actually measure themselves against these. So they're not trying to just flog themselves to death just to try and get this done. That the actual bonus is based on something that's real, that they can measure themselves against. So it's just something.
Can I just say that's really important actually, because I lived through the go-go internet years in America, and I can remember a lot of people in California who had given life and soul, including all the way down to like the secretarial pool. Everybody just killed themselves to get, and some of them had bought their shares and paid their tax on the shares, and then the bust hit, and some of them lost everything, because they had bet their health, their life, their financial futures on something that was not tangible. And so I think a lot was learned from that, and the balance between share and salary got adjusted, certainly in California anyway, but not everywhere. I'd say it's gone back probably the other way too far, but it's a risk proposition for sure.
Yeah,
I've always said to people in my teams, the ESOP and stuff like that is the reward for taking a chance on a smaller business and taking a chance on a startup or a scale up. I've only ever had one that paid off. It got bought out by another company within 6 months of me starting.
Yeah.
That's the only time it paid off.
It was because of you.
That was already publicly listed.
It was because of you. Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I worked for a small company that got bought, and we were all really excited because it got bought. It was a venture capital company that had invested in us, and we had amazing page views, and they folded us into a company that was supposed to go public, and that company was AltaVista. And AltaVista did not go public because in 2000 April, when it was supposed to go public, see, none of it's bankable. So you have to just be really, again, really balanced about it.
There's a really cool Simpsons episode. Have you seen?
Yes.
where Bart's going around with the toilet roll and he's going, "Hey, have some chairs." That's a cracker. It's so cool.
It's the same thing, frankly, in some cases. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, another great share for the group, the LinkedIn group. Simon, last one was the IT crowd. Thanks for that contribution. I'll look for the Simpson episode. David, would like to go next, David?
I guess mine was roughly just a culmination of those. Every team is different. Every organization is different. I work for a purpose-driven organization where we want to do this, but I think it's about making sure that the team agree that we do this, and that I guess the boundaries aren't movable, right? They while they may be elastic at that point, they snap back to where they are, and making sure that, there'll be times where we need to be able to push ourselves and have a unreasonable workload, but making sure that it snaps back to the norm rather than being stretched out continually as stretch targets on top of stretch target on stretch target. So, I agree completely with the statement, but, for me, I think it's about every organization slightly different.
And I have to say that I was struggling with David, because David debunks my argument that the old adage, it's not like what we're doing is curing cancer. It's not like what we're doing is fixing homelessness. Well, in David's case, it actually is. So it's not work for him.
Mm.
And I did promise I will give a virtual tour of our new Y Park facility in my office in the next one. So I'll bring a little bit of a video for you, Nat, and you can show that on what I do.
Cool.
Well, I'm trying to get a speaker from the Black Dog Institute. I'm not succeeding, although we have donated thousands of dollars literally to them. So I'm considering maybe redirect to Origin, because you guys are doing great work. Yeah. So oh, this has been recorded. Okay, Suzanne, Suzanne, would you like to go next with your key takeaway from today? So nice to have Suzanne was here in the kickoff. 6 events, 6 months ago. So good that you made it again. So
I'm committed now. I've made some decisions about getting rid of some things. I'm a say yes person, and it's really problematic for me. So I'm choosing very carefully what I'm saying yes to, and this is one of them for sure. Because I've seen the downside. I lost a brother to not being mindful and not taking care of himself. He's a CEO, and he died partially because, or at least in some giant portion, because he couldn't stop. So I've seen the downside. I've seen the dark side. No, I think it's just my story. But what I took away from today is that the challenge I always have is that I've worked for the Darth Vader CEOs, storm around in black psychotic mode, like fear and based culture. And I've worked for the opposite. And my challenge is always, what can we do to create more environments where people in the technology space who are not leading by fear can thrive and succeed and get the top jobs? Because to me, that is a big part of the solution. So what education can we offer to boards on why that's important? What education can we offer to hiring agents on why that's important? What can we do to recruitment to make sure that those people are leading the people, not the ones who are motivated by power and money and God knows whatever else happened to them in their childhood. So
I think we're in a really good position for that at the moment, because there's the skills shortage. People are being selective who they work for. And, well, it's really, if you're not a good leader, it's really hard to hire, because people are, I'm not working there.
And people, it's hard to hide it now. It didn't used to be so hard. Now everybody talks.
I was able to make that point at that CIO CDO conference that I was in a panel at last week in Docklands, and gee, it was well received. A lot of people, not a lot of nodding and really hearing that message and saying, yeah, now's the time. Yeah, we're going to have to look after our people or we'll lose them. Now that's a bit of that's the wrong reason to care about it, but it's a reason to care about it, right?
It's a good way to start caring about it.
Yeah, make it real to hit the company's pocketbook.
Yeah. On that note, there's so much I would like to share, but one idea very, very fresh in my mind. It's while I think these monthly roundtables are good to have initial discussions and touch on the declarations. Now we're getting nearly to the end of the cycle of covered all the 10 by July. And then we have the new manifesto. So next financial year will be probably different format, the roundtables. But I don't think that's anywhere close to what we really need. So I haven't shared with Michael yet, but I'm thinking of maybe organizing in the next semester, perhaps like an immersive kind of program, maybe meeting once a month, having maybe 4 hours, like a master class, where we can have more time to discuss and go deeper in those issues. But that's just an idea. Maybe I'll probably reach out to you guys and get your perspective on what will be helpful for you, in terms of going a little bit deeper and engaging with more CIOs. So I have our virtual assistant now connecting with more CIOs, and hopefully, having more people aligned with our philosophy to have those discussions, because the more reach I think we have, the more impact we can make, I believe. Yeah.
Thanks, Nat.
You're welcome.
I think out of today, there's a couple of things that just sort of key thoughts that triggered especially during Simon's presentation, where mentioning the long hours, I had the thought, how much of that's generational learning? I learned it from my father, he learned it from his father. We're trying to break that mold. But then I also thought, hang on, the position that a lot of us are in, we're further through our career, so we may work longer hours because our kids are generally older. So I'm really conscious when I'm dealing with the people I work with that, especially one of them is yet to have kids. Another one has a very young child. Like I think his child just turned 2. And I'm like, My kid's 22. She doesn't care whether I'm home or not. I can work late. That's fine. He can't. His 2-year-old cares. So I think that was one of the thoughts. Then you also mentioned, Simon, your back-to-back meetings. And I think I've mentioned this before in this forum, the short meeting setting or speedy meetings, depending on whether you're in Google or Outlook, which takes your 1-hour meetings back to 50 minutes, your half-hour ones to 25. So you actually can take that toilet break between meetings. I found that quite useful. And I also, just as a complete side note, I think I found the best mindful exercise I've discovered to date in the last month. Go out into a horse paddock and just literally start shoveling shit from the shit pile into a trailer and transport it across. And it's, yeah, you're just such a, like, you're out in the middle of a paddock. You've got all the sounds of nature, and it's a relatively easy task, just gets a bit of exercise going, but there's no one's putting any pressure on you for anything because you're literally shoveling shit.
Have you found something, Michael, to be focused? Whatever you decide to focus your attention, it works from a mindfulness perspective, really. Okay, guys, the course of time, thank you so much. I know time is precious, and we spoke about that today. Just copy that on the chat box. If you have 2 minutes before you go, or just after you log out, it would be good to hear your thoughts about today's conversation. What we could do better, any ideas. And yeah, thanks so much. Hope you found this conversation was valuable, and hopefully see you next month, and perhaps we'll touch base before, Simon, if you have time, and Andrew as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Yeah.
Good
Thank you.
stuff.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks. Nice
Thanks.
meeting you all.
Thank you all.
See
Bye
ya.
for now.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.